Hello! Thank you for joining me for this presentation of data for Findley Oaks Elementary. Our current school improvement plan aims for an increase in the percentage of students achieving in the exceeds category in the subjects of language arts, reading, and math. The purpose of this report is to give an overview of our students' achievement on the CRCT in these three subjects over the past 3 years. It is the goal of this report to highlight our strengths and weaknesses in student achievement in an effort to improve learning at Findley Oaks Elementary. These next few graphs show a cohort-to-cohort comparison of our school's scores on the CRCT over the past 3 years. The figures shown are the percentage of students achieving in the exceeds category in each year. This graph is showing the scores for the reading test. Here is the same model showing scores on the language arts test. And here is the same model showing the scores on the math test. As you can see, with all three of these graphs, our school scores are much higher than both the district and the state, and that's something to be proud of. These next three graphs show a value-added model for students achieving in the exceeds category for the past 3 years. The 2010-2011 data represents this cohort's third grade year. Then the 2011-2012 data represents the same cohort's fourth grade year. And finally, the 2012-2013 data show the same cohort's fifth grade year. Here we have data for the reading test. Here is the same model showing scores on the language arts test. And here is the same model showing scores for the math test. These numbers are all very impressive, and we should be proud of our school's achievement. The data clearly point to a strength in our school and that we are consistently above district and state averages on every subject in both models. On average, for 3 years, in cohort-to-cohort model, we are 22% above the district and 32% above the state on the reading test, 24% above the district and 36% above the state on the language arts test, and 30% above the district and 39% above the state on the math test. With the value-added model, we are 23% above the district and 32% above the state on the reading test, 24% above the district and 35% above the state on the language arts test, and 25% above the district and 35% above the state on the math test. However, as we will soon see, these scores are not consistent among various subgroups in our school. Before we look at scores disaggregated by subgroup, let's first look at the school population over the past 3 years. As you can see from these graphs, our school population has not had much change in terms of ethnicity and racial groups. These next few slides show the school average for percentage of students achieving in the exceeds category for the past 3 years compared to the percentage of students achieving the same score within each ethnicity race group. I would like to point out that the data for students of 2 or more races is not available for the school years prior to 2012 and 2013. I would also like to point out that this is not by any single grade level, but this is an average of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, meaning the school average is an average of all 3 grades for each year. This graph is showing the data for the reading test. As you can see, there's much disparity between the groups. Here's the same model showing scores on the language arts test. Again, we have disparity among each different ethnicity and racial subgroup. And finally, here's the same model showing scores on the math test. This graph shows the percentage of our school population in other student subgroups: students with disabilities, or SWDs, English language learners, or ELLs, and economically disadvantaged, or ED. The data here also show there hasn't been much of a drastic change over the past 3 years. These next few slides show the school average for percentage of students achieving in the exceeds category for the past 3 years compared to the percentage of students achieving the same score within the other student subgroups. I would like to point out that our ESOL teacher was out on maternity leave for much of the 2011-2012 school year, which may explain the drastic changes in data shown here. This graph is showing data for the reading test. Here is the same model showing scores on the language arts test. And here is the same model showing scores on the math test. One weakness that these data reveal is that the scores of some ethnicity and race groups and students and other student subgroups are lower than the school average. The following shows scores that are, on average for the past 3 years, at least 10 points lower than the school average. In the ethnicity subgroups, the African American subgroup is scoring 15% lower than the school average. In reading, the African American subgroup is scoring 17% lower, and the Hispanic subgroup is scoring 16% lower than the school average in language arts. And the African American subgroup is scoring 34% lower than the school average in math. For other student subgroups, the economically disadvantaged group is scoring 17% lower. The English language learners group is scoring 40% lower, and the students with disabilities group is scoring 26% lower than the school average in reading. The economically disadvantaged group is scoring 14% lower. The English language learners group is scoring 28% lower, and the students with disabilities group is scoring 34% lower than the school average in language arts. And the economically disadvantaged group is scoring 21% lower. The English language learner group is scoring 12% lower, and the students with disabilities group is scoring 34% lower than the school average in math. Finally, I will leave you with these two discussion questions. Question 1. Did you know about these achievement gaps before the data was disaggregated into different racial and ethnic groups and student subgroups? And question 2. What strategies that are within the control of the school can we try to close these achievement gaps? Thank you very much for watching this data presentation.